For decades, the rules of war were written in steel. It was all about a handful of giant companies building bigger, more expensive weapons. But what we're seeing today on battlefields from Eastern Europe to the Middle East, well, that entire playbook is being torn apart. And it's revealing a pretty serious flaw in America's arsenal. And that brings us to this question, which really gets right to the heart of the matter. For so long, we measured military might by the roar of a jet engine. But really, what good is a billion-dollar fighter jet when a $1,000 drone can suddenly challenge its dominance on the battlefield? This slide really lays out the whole conflict. On the left, you've got the legacy model. It's all about these decade-long development cycles to create perfect, exquisite, and incredibly expensive hardware. But the reality of modern war, over on the right, it's all about speed. It's about agility. It's about software. The battlefield is just evolving way faster than the old guard can bend metal. So, what's the answer to this problem? Well, it's what people are calling the defense tech renaissance. You've got this whole new breed of companies, a lot of them born right in Silicon Valley, and they are storming the gates with a totally different approach to building the arsenal of the future. And that brings us to this core concept, algorithmic warfare. Basically, it means that a weapon's power isn't just in its physical hardware anymore. Its true lethality, its real power, is defined by its code. And that code can be updated overnight, turning a simple drone into a sophisticated hunter-killer. This quote is really the central philosophy of the whole movement. The best way to think about it is like your smartphone, right? The physical phone is just a vessel. The real power comes from the apps and all the software updates. Well, that exact same principle is now being applied to weapons of war. And listen, this is not some niche little experiment. We are talking about a tidal wave of capital, $28 billion in just the first half of 2025. Venture capitalists are betting huge on this paradigm shift, and they're funding this transformation at a speed the Pentagon has, historically really struggled to match on its own. So all this funding has given rise to a new vanguard of companies. And these are not your grandfather's defense contractors. They're achieving these massive unicorn valuations, and they're building technology that is just fundamentally changing the entire game. So let's look at the key players here. First, you have Anduril, with a valuation that's just staggering. Their approach is aggressive. They build the weapons first, and then they sell them to the government. Then you've got Shield AI, and they're chasing what you might call the Holy Grail, a completely autonomous AI pilot. And of course, there's Palantir, which is laser-focused on battlefield data, trying to shrink the time it takes to make critical decisions from hours down to just seconds. Okay, let's start with Anduril. They're kind of the poster child of this whole insurgency. Their model just flips the script. Instead of waiting for a government contract, they use their own private money to build what they think the military is going to need. And at the heart of it all is their Lattice OS, which is basically an AI brain, a central nervous system connecting an entire family of cheap, expendable hardware all across the battlefield. Then you have Shield AI, and what they're doing is, frankly, straight out of science fiction. Their hive mind AI pilot lets aircraft operate completely on their own, even if they lose GPS or all communication with a human pilot. And this is not just a theory. They actually put it in a real F-16 that won an autonomous dogfight. It proved that AI can maneuver at the absolute edge of what is physically possible. And this movement isn't just limited to the skies or even just to the United States. Down in Texas, you've got a company called Saronic that's building autonomous ships for the Navy. And over in Europe, startups like Helsing are bringing this same advanced AI software to NATO allies. It just goes to show you how widespread this new technological arms race has become. But of course, a massive disruption like this, it never happens without friction. That move fast and break things culture of Silicon Valley is colliding head-on with the slow, cautious, risk-averse bureaucracy of the Pentagon. For these startups, probably the biggest hurdle is this infamous valley of death. Here's how it works. They can win a small grant to build a prototype, but getting a massive procurement contract, that means navigating a years-long bureaucratic maze. A maze that was designed for giant contractors, not for nimble startups. And a lot of really innovative companies simply run out of cash and die right in that gap. And if you want a perfect example of this culture clash, look no further than the dispute with the AI company Anthropic. The Pentagon basically demanded all lawful use of its AI models. But Anthropic, which was concerned about the ethics, tried to impose some safeguards on military use. Well, the Pentagon didn't negotiate. They just designated the company a supply chain risk, effectively banning them. And guess what? Rivals like OpenAI quickly stepped in to fill the void. It just shows you the brutal pragmatism of this new market. So what's the end game here? After all of this disruption and all of this conflict, what's the ultimate outcome? What we're witnessing is the birth of a new, kind of hybrid military-industrial complex.
So, no, the legacy giants, they aren't just disappearing. They're smart, they're adapting. They know their expertise is in building the heavy platforms, the ships, the planes, the tanks. But they also know that to make that hardware relevant for the next 50 years, it has to be fused with Silicon Valley's software.
And all of this creates a totally new model for how modern nations will arm themselves. It's all about leveraging the speed of commercial tech, building prototypes incredibly quickly, and aiming for superiority not in numbers, but in algorithms. It seems the future of security won't be forged in a traditional factory anymore. It's going to be coded in the cloud. This whole thing leaves us with one final, absolutely critical question. As software becomes the ultimate weapon, and that line between a tech company and a defense contractor just completely disappears, who gets to write the rules for this new era of warfare? Is it the coders in Silicon Valley or the generals in the Pentagon?